this issue now, and it's a sad one. Takes us back to April. It's been, what, over 3 months since the devastating floods hit KwaZulu Natal. Unfortunately, some families have still not found their loved ones who perished in the waters. Others, the DNA tests have not been returned to them. Our reporter Manqoba Mchunu has been speaking to families today, and he joins us now from KwaNdengezi. Manqoba, this is a tough story. Well, he joins us now from the studio, in fact. I can see that you're in the studio. Manqoba, talk to us about, there's an issue of DNA testing that hasn't been returned. And there's also, of course, the issue of people who were swept away in the flood waters, and despite extensive searches, there has been no sign of them.
Indeed, Sally, and you can imagine the agony that these families are going through. It's been almost 3 months now since their loved ones were swept away. And we visited 2 of those families, Sally, in KwaNdengezi. You recall, we have covered these 2 families quite extensively. And this is the Hlope family that is still trying to find 7 of their family members. 6 of them are young children between the ages of 1 year old and 10 years old. And we also spoke to the Nduli family that is also still looking for 6 of their family members, who include an 11-month-old baby. So they've been literally going up and down, Sally, looking at mortuaries, trying to find their loved ones. They've even been going to riverbanks where bodies were found just to try and locate their loved ones. And they say that back in April, their DNA tests were done, not the DNA tests, Sally, but rather the DNA samples were taken by police. But up until now, these families say they have not received any information as to what is happening, and they're still battling to find closure. They're saying that they're really pleading with government to try and perhaps speed up the process of DNA testing. They're saying that up until now, they don't know what happened to their loved ones. They don't know whether they're lying in mortuaries. They don't know whether they're still buried in the ground, in the yard. So they're really hoping to find some answers, Sally. And earlier on, I did speak to these 2 families, and this is what they had to say, Sally.
Bawathatha ama-DNA sisalindile kuthiwa asilinde 6 months kuyaphezulu, so bukade ungakapheli 6 months. Okwamanje nje kusathuli, akukho lutho okuqhubekayo, asikaze sabathola laba abawu-6 abalokhane besidukelile, sisagcina sithola u-anti nje kuphela.
Unengane eyodwa eyatholakala emfuleni eliganda. Le ngane lena yathi mayitholakala kwasho ukuthi amalungu omzimba ayo ayingasaphelele. Kodwa noma kunjalo amalungu omzimba ayingasaphelele, kodwa thina njengomndeni siyayibona ukuthi ingane yethu leya yana. Kodwa kwathiwa ngesikwazi ukuthi sinikezwe yona ngani ngoba safanele ihlolwe eqabo lathi yethu ngampela yini. Konke lokho sesilinde kakhulu futhi iphelile inyanga ezimbili lokho kwenzeka kuze kube imanjeni impendulo asithu esalokuthiwa silinde. Siyacela uhulumeni asisheshisele ngempela lathi kuze sikwazi sidlule kulento.
All right, so Manqoba, we haven't yet had time to put the translations on those clips from family members. I know you're going to tell us exactly what they said, but just explain to me, if there's a body, why do you need DNA testing? Because surely the family member can go and identify the body by looking at the person's face. Am I missing something here?
Well, Sally, what we do understand is that, some of the bodies have been badly decomposed. In fact, when we spoke to the families, they told us that they have been told by, government officials at mortuaries that they have stopped the process of identifying bodies. In fact, this was back in May when they were told that they can't identify these bodies anymore because of the state of decomposition. You recall, Sally, that some of these bodies are also missing body parts. So it has been quite a traumatic experience for these families having to go from different mortuaries to try and find their loved ones. So they were told that they'll have to wait for DNA. In fact, that's the reason why the DNA was taken from these families to ensure that even though those bodies have been decomposed, some of them badly, but they can perhaps find some sense of closure when the DNA are matched with these bodies. They are hoping that could be their relatives. We know so far, Sally, from the update that Premier Sihle Zikalala gave about 2 weeks ago, is that there were still 23 bodies that were at mortuaries mortuaries that DNA had not been collected. And so this means that the agony still exists for these families. But just to tell you what those two families were saying, Sally, in those bites, we had Kolisiwe Hlope first, just describing that their DNA samples were taken in April, and up until now, they're still waiting. In fact, they were told that it could take up to 6 months for their DNA testing to be concluded. She says that there are no answers. There's been no information coming as to what really will happen to them. Then there was also Thokozile Ntuli, who is from the Ntuli family, just explaining that there was a child that was found, Sally, last month, that was found in Luganda at a river, and they went and saw the child, and they saw that this could be their child. But however, they haven't been able to claim that body because it was missing some of the body parts, including a head. And so they were told that they'll have to wait for the DNA to come. But they're quite certain, Sally, that that is their child, and they want to bury that child. So they're saying that they're really pleading with government to fasten up this period, this testing of DNA, so that as families they can have closure.
Oh, it's absolutely heartbreaking. I know you've spoken to the police as well, because I think the lab tests fall within the National Health Laboratory Services, but also it falls more broadly under the police, if I'm not mistaken.
Indeed, Sal. In fact, we started with the Department of Health here in KwaZulu Natal, and they said that it's actually the police that are responsible for this, because you recall, Sally, that in every missing persons case, there is a case that is opened by police. So they are investigating these missing bodies. So we did make contact with the police, and they have told us, Sally, that the reason why it has taken this long is because some of the bodies are so badly decomposed, Sally, they have to look at other methods to try and extract DNA from those bodies. And that's really what they're saying is behind, the slow processing of the DNA results. They're saying that they're pleading with these families to actually give them some time to complete them. And they say, Sally, that they will try and do their best to complete these DNA samples. Take a listen to what Glenda Mate from the National Police Department had to say.
Police are working around the clock to expedite the forensic determination of the identities of the remaining bodies of the KZN flood victims. In some instances, the extent of decomposition on some of the bodies meant police had to explore alternative means of obtaining DNA samples for analysis. This had subsequently caused delays in the handing over of the deceased bodies to families. The SAPS wants to assure the families that there is progress and the results of the DNA analysis of the remaining bodies will be finalized. Families are therefore requested to be patient with this process.
Yeah, those images are just very sad, those little ones that are lost and gone. We also have this ongoing issue of the amount of people that are missing. Are these people included, and what is the latest figure? Is it 28 or is it higher than that?
Well, Sally, at this particular moment, we are not quite certain what the latest figure. We did make contact with the Department of Health just to try and ascertain those numbers, because those numbers that I just mentioned earlier on were given up by the Premier of the province about 2 weeks ago, that 23 people that were still in mortuaries unidentified and without DNA having been taken from them. But the Premier did mention that there were still about 86 people that were missing, that were unaccounted for in the province. But the latest figures, Sally, we're not quite sure this time. They've told us that we'll need perhaps to speak to the Department of Cooperative Governance here in this particular province or the Premier's office. But up until now, we have not been able, Sally, to get those numbers and to confirm those numbers. This is just from that briefing that Premier had about 2 weeks ago. But certainly, Sally, I can tell you that there's still many families. In KwaNdengezi alone, Sally, it's about, if I count correctly, about 15 people or 16 people that still are not accounted for, that are still missing, just in that area alone. I'm talking about the Ntuli family, the Hlope family, there's also the Memela family, there's also the Pewa family. All of these families, Sally, still have not found their loved ones.
Absolutely tragic, and no answers since April. Thank you so much, our reporter Manqoba Mchunu, telling us that there are 23 unidentified bodies in mortuaries after the April floods, but 86 people at least still missing, and in one small area, 15 people just in one small area that they have no idea where they are.